Good morning, Year 2. We're going to do some guided reading, carrying on with The Frankenstein Teacher. Today we're going to be reading Chapter 3 and then looking at some questions. So if you haven't done Chapter 1 and 2, do those first. If you want to remind yourself, you can always watch the videos again. Let's have a look then at Chapter 3. At the front of the little classroom, there stood the Frankenstein teacher in his big suit. Inside that big suit, there was his big body. Inside that big body, there beat his big heart. And inside that big heart, something very, very big was being felt. After all, this was the biggest day of the Frankenstein teacher's life. Unlike the doctor, the Frankenstein teacher loved kids. He couldn't think of a better job than being a teacher. He was desperate to do it well. He was desperate for the kids to like him too. The children of class 3F were starting to relax at least. Most of them were staring at the Frankenstein teacher, but a few of them were whispering to each other, and 2 of them actually put their hands up. Yes, said the Frankenstein teacher in his growly voice. He pointed at the nearest child who wanted to ask a question. "Why are you so ugly, sir?" said the child, a cheeky boy. The class exploded into sniggers and giggles and relaxed a whole lot more. "Excuse me," said the Frankenstein teacher, a bit surprised. "Please, sir," called out the second child with a hand up. "Yes," said the Frankenstein teacher, turning to her. "Hannibal's escaped again, sir," she said, and the same old panic began. Pretty soon, most of the children were laughing and cheering, a few of them were screaming and squealing, and 2 of them were chasing and leaping, and right in the middle of all that sound and fury was the not-so-happy Frankenstein teacher doing his best. He helped catch Hannibal. He stamped stiffly around the classroom with his giant feet. Thud, thud, thud. He reached out with his giant hands. He held onto the hamster and gently eased him back into his cage. But that word ugly kept ringing through his brain. He noticed the children kept out of his way, although they hung around the other teachers. He noticed that the children had plenty to say, although only when they thought he wasn't listening. And by the end of the day, the Frankenstein teacher was very depressed. "They don't like me, Hannibal," he said sadly to the only friend he'd made. "It's because of how I look, isn't it?" Hannibal peeked in his mirror too and squeaked. "Though I suppose I could change that, couldn't I?" We're going to have a look at Chapter 4 tomorrow. For now, though, let's have a look at some of the questions you're going to need to answer about Chapter 3 of The Frankenstein Teacher. So the first one is a clarifying Connor question. It asks you, can you think of another word that means the same as big? Now, this author has repeated the word big lots of times at the start of this story. Can you think of another word, another adjective that means the same thing? The second question is about this page here. Why did the Frankenstein teacher want to be a teacher in the first place? Why did he want to be a teacher? Now, our next one is actually a question about grammar. It's got 4 different sentence types here. A question, an exclamation, a statement, and command. And it asks, what sort of sentence is "Why are you so ugly, sir"? What sort of sentence is that? There's a bit of a clue with that punctuation at the end of that sentence there. Our next question says, how did the class feel about their new teacher? And then it says, how do you know? Well, when you're asked how do you know something, that is a retriever question, because you need to retrieve some information from the book to explain how do you know how they felt about their new teacher. In this chapter, after that cheeky boy calls the Frankenstein teacher ugly, it says the Frankenstein teacher was very depressed. We've got another clarifying Connor question here. What does depressed mean, do you think? The next one, number 5, says, in the book, the word ugly kept ringing through his brain. What does that mean? What does it mean that the word ugly kept ringing through his brain? Now we need to do a bit of predicting with Predicting Peter. It says at the end of this chapter, I suppose, the Frankenstein teacher says he supposes he could change the way he looks. So what do you think he's going to do in chapter 4? How is he going to change the way that he looks? And then finally, we have got a summarising Sally question. Can you write just 2 or 3 sentences about what has happened in chapter 3? You need to summarise what has happened in chapter 3. And we'll carry on with that tomorrow. Bye.